Okay, welcome folks. It's been a while since I've streamed or made a video. Let's get back into this. It might be a bit clunky, forgive me. I'll probably to get back in the seat again is to highlight, first of all, my good friend Dara O'Flaherty and his great work that he's doing on his Telegram channel. He hosts a live 1 hour podcast with discussion every weekday. And the great thing about it is it's not just a free for all. He sort of like moderates it quite closely to make sure that if he gets people involved, that they're on topic. Great. Okay, so let's have a look and see what he's saying. And I'll probably be cutting in and out of this. So let's see. I won't show the whole thing. I'll make a few comments every now and again. Let's get him started.
Welcome to the Wandering Wanderer podcast today, Monday. We've got a good show lined up for you today. A few topics I want to talk about. I hope you guys had a good weekend. I was looking at the Sinn Féin Ardèche there at the weekend. They had Panty Bliss speaking at their event in Wexford. So they had Panty Bliss up speaking. And this is a trans autogynephiliac who believes he doesn't need Garda clearance to work with children. And that's a position, of course, that the Taoiseach of this country supports also. So I wonder, does Sinn Féin support the position that Panty Bliss doesn't need Garda clearance to work with children, or that autogynephiliacs don't need Garda clearance to work with children? You'd think it'd be something that they'd want to separate themselves from, instead of separating themselves from government. Instead, we get confirmation that we are truly being governed in a uni-party system. That it doesn't matter who you elect, they'll all allow autogynephiliacs to have access to children without Garda clearance, which is not something I ever expected to be saying. Does anybody have anything they want to say about the Sinn Féin Ardèche? Okay, no worries. Stefan, kan start.
Thanks, Dara. No. I just wanted to apologise for not getting down there. It's been down my end of the country, and maybe doing something there, like trying to pop up and ask a question, or record it at least. But so that's what Sinn Féin needs now, is the people don't want to associate with them.
Yeah, and that would work, I guess, if they weren't so popular. But the problem is that so many Sinn Féin voters think they're voting for Sinn Féin of the 70s and 80s, when actually they're voting for the WEF of 2040.
I think that spell is broken with the immigration protest. That's after damaging that.
No, it did. It certainly did, Stephen. It damaged it for quite a large number of Sinn Féiners, but they haven't suffered significantly in the poll. Well, it is significant. What I mean is, it's not a huge dent in their polling numbers.
That's what I think they have. That's a large part of their voter base now. That's we can't ignore. Is the farmers switching their vote?
Oh no, absolutely, yeah. But I'm more concerned as well with the traditional Sinn Féin voter. One thing is our policy, but the traditional Sinn Féin voter is misinformed. The traditional Sinn Féin voter does not understand what their party is about. And it's like they're going out to vote for a soccer team. That's my team, I'm going to vote for them. It doesn't matter what their policies are. So we need to educate Sinn Féin voters to what the actual policies of Sinn Féin are. And I don't think you can do that by turning your back. I think you actually have to engage with them.
Yes, this is gold dust. This is what I've been saying for a long time as well. We've got to get out of this echo chamber, and this is the great time to bring in this slide that I've been working on, so just bear with me. I'll share it. Yes, okay, cool. So this is the adoption curve for the uptake of a new idea. It comes from product marketing, which is a very important discipline to take ideas from. I mean, the smart person reuses ideas from other disciplines. You don't have to work everything out for yourself. So in politics, we're taking an idea from product marketing, new ideas, or product marketing to politics, to the uptake of Irish nationalism and populism. So from this curve, actually, let's go back to the new ideas. The people have done a lot of work on this. This is called an adoption curve. There's a little pen. Mouse pointer's pen. Yeah, adoption curve. If you look this stuff up, if this is like time along the bottom, this is our timeline. Any new idea needs to go through certain stages. At the start, you have your innovators, and that'll just be a tiny fraction of the whole market. The whole market here for an idea could be the electorate. Then next, the innovators attract the early adopters. The early adopters attract the early majority. These people here are the late majority. They're the people who will wait until the majority or fair plurality, most like 45%, 45% of the market are on board before they'll start to come on board. And you're going to get the laggards who will wait until the majority. They'll just follow the crowd, right? The laggards will follow the crowd, and some of these late majorities will be following the crowd as well. All right. Okay. So who are the innovators in terms of Irish nationalism? That's going to be National Party members, FP members, Ireland First members. We're talking about, out of an electorate of 2 million, we're talking about like 10, 20,000. Would that be 20,000 is 1% of 2 million. So members and voters. Early adopters would be the sort of people who would, at the moment, would be independent mindsets, not tied to a particular party, who at the moment who have a suspicion of or the bigger parties, and at the moment are the only real option is to vote for independents or some of these more nationalist parties, etc. So we're at the stage at the moment where we have our. I think it was Dara in a minute is going to say there was 30,000 people voted nationalist in the last election. Now, obviously, that has grown. So, out of 2 million, that was 1.5%. That's actually that figures because in any election, in any place that we stood, the National Party had 10 candidates and the IFP had 11 candidates. Renew had about 5 or 6. You could count the more nationally minded independents in that as well. We're talking about 1.5%, 2%. Now we're starting to see the early adoption, people who vote for independence, or who didn't vote because they had a suspicion of the big parties, and they're starting to get involved in their local communities now in terms of the close down the DP centres protests, and who were out all through COVID, taking that populist stance. Suspicion of government statistics, government propaganda around the needlework, around the lockdown, etc. After those come on board, then the next thing, and we're halfway through that part of the curve there, this early adopter part of the curve. Let's see if we can draw again. Yeah, we're halfway through. Let's say I need to work on my technique here. We're about here. Next thing is to attract the early majority. And what sort of people are those? Those are people who are not politically aware, but are open-minded and could perhaps change their vote based on a good logical argument being presented to them. And at this stage, look, that's the major battle. We're not so interested at this stage of the game in the late majority, the people who have taken on the brainwashing and propaganda from the media. They're going to be a lot more resistant to new ideas than the early majority. So we're not going to worry about those for now. They'll come on board when the early majority. They'll be attracted by numbers. They're crowd followers, and the laggards probably. Actually, that should be laggards with an R at the end. That's not my mistake. It's a graphic that I used. The laggards, in terms of Irish nationalism, they would be the ideological progressives and progressive extremists. Some of them can be nice. I've got a family member in that camp. She's a very nice person. I enjoy hanging out with her. But when we come to politics, we're chalk and cheese, absolutely at other ends. And she is ideologically wedded to progressivism. She's never going to change. I can't see her changing for years. Also, you've got bio-Leninists and recent products of the Irish education system. I mean, you get laggards from all ages, but let's not even worry too much about them because they're dyed in the wool. They're the last people to come on board, if at all, if ever. So people that we're least interested in talking to, we're far more focused over here on the early majority, this one. and the early adopters. We're halfway through that, and early majority. I would say there's no point, and we won't be talking to the innovators. There's no point talking unless we're talking about strategy. There's no point just singing. You're wasting your time if you're talking to somebody who's already voting for these parties. Or sees the world. So, like all this massive energy that's invested in Telegram groups, that's a waste of time. There's no point really unless you're saying something new that hasn't been said before. We're more interested in getting to the rest of these people, showing them some local leadership that they can rally around, or being that local leadership if there isn't any already, and finding it. And I've got some ideas for that, for how to join people up using technology. And then taking these two platforms, the innovators and the early adopters, and launching and finding and communicating to these people and getting them on board. That's the game. Okay, so I decided it might be a good idea to cut that last 5 or 6 minutes out as a separate video. So that's what I've done. And so that video, and it's up on my YouTube channel, which is that. It's got my name in it with Galileo. It's also on Substack. I've got a Substack as well if you prefer to do things that way. Okay, back to Dara.
With the Panty Bliss thing, I think that's where I missed the trick. I didn't know Panty Bliss was going to be there. If I did, it would have been good for me to get there and get some footage, or maybe even alert one of the more stauncher kind of investigators to get there. Maybe like Philip Dwyer, etc., or yourself there. Is there any footage of the art fish?
No, I haven't seen it. No.
It would be excellent to have footage of Panty Bliss, a decrepit-looking, middle-aged, deteriorating man dressed in full drag on the stage of a Sinn Féin art fish.
That's one for the books, all right. That's definitely one for the books. That would, yeah. I'm sure there is a picture somewhere to be found. You'll find it eventually.
Do you think they hid it out of shame? Like, now, lads, we're bringing up Panty Bliss, please, for the love of God. For the love of God,
go easy. Yeah.
No recording.
I don't know, and obviously the Panty Bliss is the sensational side of it. But I think myself there was room for individuals to have a sign, maybe say, ask them their policy on open borders, ask them their policy on transgenderism, ask them about various policies that they have. If you were standing outside with like a hold the line sign, or with something punchy, that you could get individual members when they go in to ask questions. And, it changes the zeitgeist in the room. It changes the feeling in the room when counter-narrative questions are asked. Everybody could have asked, do you think Panty Bliss should have Garda clearance before he's interacting with children? That's a pretty straightforward question to ask at an Ardèche. So there's room at all of these events, and I do appreciate that you don't want to be giving them energy and whatever, but the fact is the protest vote is where we're going to get a lot of our votes. And yes, we are making ground with the Sinn Féin voter, but the problem I discovered recently is that for every one or two we take away, there's 3 or 4 joining Sinn Féin. What I mean is, there's a lot of people coming from. We're taking a lot of traditional Sinn Féin voters because they don't see the nationalism anymore. But in the meantime, for every 1 or 2 of those we get, 3 or 4 more farmers or Fine Gael voters or Fianna Fáil voters go towards Sinn Féin. So it's important that we keep updating new members of Sinn Féin as to what this party is really about. And it is about globalism. Like, why a farmer would join Sinn Féin after, considering their stance on globalism is just beyond me. And it could only be because they don't understand who Sinn Féin really are, And this is something that I think that individually as people, even your family or a small group of people, could easily help inform Sinn Féin voters of the stance of their party. Even if it's as much as buying a stack of paper, printing a leaflet out of your printer and going around to your neighbour's house. That's a really powerful thing to do. It causes people to ask questions. Really.
Now, even before he gets on to that, let me just take it back a wee bit to the Sinn Féin voter.
The stance of their partner really are, and this is something that I think that individually as people, even your family or a small group of people, could easily help inform Sinn Féin voters?
Yes, now the Sinn Féin voter, what Dara is doing here is he's doing market segmentation, focusing in not on the whole electorate, because like your PBP voter is beyond the pale right there. There's no point talking to them. So there's an adoption curve, and the people we want to get are people that are close to the early adopters and the innovators and the early adopters. And the Sinn Féin voter is the next biggest wage after your nationalist, your populist, and your nationalist, like your IFP, National Party, Ireland First, etc., etc. Some of them were nationally minded independents, farmer, rural TDs, etc. The next tranche to be going after that's worth targeting, the next market segment, if you like, because like politics is marketing. You're marketing and you're selling an idea instead of a product. So the next market segment to go for is the Sinn Féin voter, not the progressive Sinn Féin voter, but the old-fashioned Sinn Féin voter. So this is very good what Dara's talking about. Okay, so now I'm in post-production, and it actually occurred to me that we need to think a wee bit more about this. So have a look at this question, have a look at the adoption curve and the political market segments, and where do you think Sinn Féin voters will fall into? Have 10 seconds. How will you think about this? Be interesting to see if we come up with the same conclusions. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying I'm wrong. You're wrong. I'm not saying you're right. I'm wrong. I'm just saying it's a good thing to be discussing. It's good to be thinking about this. Together we can refine this. So as Dara was saying earlier, I would say that Sinn Féin voters would come into this early adopters. Those would be the old school nationalist Sinn Féin voters. But also, there are some ex-Sinn Féin voters that are now with us in the new nationalist or new nationalist populist or new populist field or camp. Well, what about the progressive Sinn Féin voters? Yeah, we'd stick them over in the laggards along with the PBP type people. Now, there's also another type of Sinn Féin voter, which is the type of Sinn Féin voter that's out for profit or status, and they're not really ideologically driven. They're driven because they're friendly with the Sinn Féin councillor. They get contracts, or they get looked after, basically, whether it's through prestige or financial gain or something else, whatever it may be. And they're unlikely to jump ship unless a new sheriff comes into town, and then the sort of people who would probably try and suck up to the new sheriff and ditch Sinn Féin, like I can't remember the metaphor. As soon as a new sheriff rides into town and the majority goes, they're followers and they're in here. And then there's the type of Sinn Féin voter who doesn't fit into the other camps, and that would be this one. So really, the answer to the question, which political market segment do Sinn Féin voters fall into? I would say you can find them in all of them. Okay, back to Dara.
Of the stance of their party, even if it's as much as buying a stack of paper, printing a leaflet out of your printer, and going around to your neighbour's house. That.
But yeah, I see what Dara's talking about there, and I think what he means is going around to all your neighbours' house, because we can actually impact things on a local basis very, very much so. But what people don't realise is the numbers game aspect of it. If anybody's worked in sales, you have to knock on 100 doors to make one sale, or I would make telephone calls. I might make 100 calls before I make one sale, but one sale might be £5,000 or something like that. This type of sales I was doing was like business to business, so they don't make a decision in a minute. It's a process, like a 1 or 2 month or 3 month process before the £5,000 check floats in the mail. But you have to play the numbers game. But there's easily 3,000 houses within 10 miles of anybody. Listen to this. So there's where you start. You can go on. There's nothing to stop you. There's no internet censorship is not going to stop you, right? The only thing that's going to stop you is your own courage or your own gumption. I find if you're polite about it, and you don't. Once you've identified, do some market segmentation, work out the hard cases. Don't, establish very quickly if somebody's a hard case. Don't worry about them. Just thank them politely and move on. If you think that somebody's close, that's the type of person you spend time with. But you don't spend too much time with, right? You make a note of their name, you call back, you give them something to think about, and then call back on them later. Do this, go through the numbers, 10 or 20, 50, 50 a week. Be responsible for your area. Find like-minded people. But I tell you, when you find like-minded people in your area, it's fantastic. It's great. I've done that. It's fantastic. And the only way you'll get there is by playing the numbers game, getting out and talking to people, being polite, quickly winnow out the wheat from the chaff.
It's a really powerful thing to do, It causes people to ask questions. Really, does Sinn Féin think that? And this is where we can capitalize. Their narratives are so paper thin that they do not stand up to the mildest of interrogation. And this is why they have to silence us, of course. This is why we get cancelled, is because they can't have a debate. So we have to force that debate.
Well, whatever's going to happen, I think the farming community is lost in this country politically. I think that they're actually committed to voting Sinn Féin. That's what I really, truly believe. They see Sinn Féin as like you said, the protest vote, and they're not engaging with anything other than the television, as is tradition.
Yes.
And maybe they might go into the village, and the minute someone asks a difficult question of them, they're up in the tractor and gone with the paper, back out to the house. It's too easily a void society for them. That's why I think they're a harder demographic to get into. But what I do think is that the farmers are going to learn the meaning of communism.
Now, before he goes on to talking about farmers and communism, on Easy Bedfellows, that's great that he's talking in terms of demographics. He's thinking, this fella, Stephen, I think his name is thinking in terms of demographics. Which demographics do you target? I love that. I don't necessarily agree with his analysis, but at least he's using the right frame, the right paradigm, which is like demographics. Which demographics should we be focusing on? Which slices of the pie, which slices of the market segment should we be focused on? Brilliant. If you start with that, he's on the right track. Anyway, back to him.
One way or another. Farmers in the 50s in Ireland were politically adept. Farmers now are not. If you look back at the way farmers were, they openly opposed communism for a couple of decades, spoke about it openly. Now they don't know what it means. So that we have to go through this period of re-education of the middle class land ownership, where they have to realize again what this means. And then we might have it a comprehensive resistance.
Yeah, I kind of, it concerns me that we would allow it to get to communism. There's a whole pile of education we could attempt before we actually descend down that road. And, individuals with signs, individuals with billets, notices, going around to people's houses, that kind of stuff. Even dropping them into pubs, even dropping them into shops, that kind of thing, that there's a giant gap in the information on the street. We tend to think we're communicating with a huge number of people when we're talking on the internet. But actually, when you go onto the street and talk to people, they have no idea about the things we're talking about. They hasn't considered any of it at all, or very little of it, in fact. So there's a huge void for content delivered face-to-face, on the street, at a door, at an event. There's a huge void there. And it's created by a fear. It's created by the fear of being out in public and being embarrassed in public, the fear of being embarrassed by your neighbour, the fear of being embarrassed going door to door, that kind of stuff. And it's...
Okay, so this is where we're going to talk about the growth mindset. So I'm just going to leave that graphic on the screen there for 10, 20 seconds, have a read through. Ask yourself, Which is your mindset for approaching challenges? What sort of challenges put you in the fixed mindset, and what sort of challenges put you in the growth? Are you comfortable with being in the growth mindset, for example?
Silly. It's silly and it's killing us, and there's no need for it. We have a huge labour force now in this movement, in this country, in what we're doing. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of people who are now awake.
Yes, and it's all wasted effort because they're sharing stuff in Telegram groups or in Facebook groups, and they're working within that that echo chamber, the innovators, early adopters, and innovators echo chamber.
And we need to start giving them jobs to do, and they need to see us on the street. Often these people, it takes a while to get connected into the bubble, to network in the bubble. And, I meet so many people that are recently awake and have been tuned into one channel or another channel, but they have no idea of the broader scope of the numbers of us. And
it's going to be local action, local people finding each other, bonding together, and taking on some local cause that's going to win the small local battles, like in Uachtarard, like in East Wall there, for example, and places that don't stand up to the plantation, for example, and there's no local leadership. They're going to get rolled over by the plantation. Yeah.
I think one of the ways that we can do that and help bring people out of their bubble is to be on the street with a leaflet, or go door to door with a leaflet, or go to events, So there's a whole bunch of people who've woken up recently whose cookies and their browser settings have isolate them from a broader spectrum of what's happening in this country. And I think the only way out of the social media bubble or algorithm is actually physical. It's in the street. At least it's the only reliable way that'll remain in the future. We don't know where they're going with technology and whatever, but we do know that you'd still be able to hand a piece of paper to someone. So, and it's a proven technology. Handed a piece of paper to someone. That's what every protest movement throughout the history. All history was organised, was letters and notices and posters and that kind of stuff.
The 1918 general election, the Irish general election, the Arthur Griffiths Sinn Féin came in with 3/4 of the seats, 3/4 of the vote. That was all hard work. It was before TV, radio, mass communications. They certainly couldn't afford adverts in the paper. It wasn't as if the electorate were even reading those papers, most of them at that stage. So it was a case of out door to door in the snow with pamphlets. Each constituency was its own battle. You could be winning in one and losing in the next, and all the goodwill in the world in one wouldn't mean a shit in the next constituency. Each constituency in an election is its own local battle. So if there's nothing happening in your constituency, you're going to lose that battle. Even though you might be supporting a white knight like Dara in Galway, if you're sitting in Dublin not doing anything, or in Wicklow, there's nothing happening in Wicklow, the battle in Wicklow, the battle in Wicklow is going to be lost. And you can't vote for Dara in Galway anyway, so you can't even really do much for him. Unless you jump in your car and go over there and help him hand out leaflets or something like that, great. But why not be the one who stands up in Wicklow, or be the person, or look for somebody, if you can't because of your job, find somebody who can stand up in Wicklow. And if you succeed and Dara succeeds, there's 2 TDs, right? Not just one. If everybody's focused on Dara, the best we can do is 1 TD, right? But if everybody is looking for their local leadership and thinking in terms of 40 constituencies, 39, 40 constituencies, we have the potential to have 39, 40 TDs, potentially.
So we have that proven technology there that's been using for hundreds of years, and we have the internet. And if you ask me, the internet hasn't been proven to do anything when it comes to protest.
protest or change? Well, it prepares a culture, but it's going to take an organized minority, elite theory, an organized minority to cause the change. There has to be some degree of organization and cohesiveness, and you can't just sit and spread information around, throw information in every direction and hope that you're going to reach 2 million voters, because you're ending up just firing information in the same direction as you did the last time to the same sorts of people. Every now and again, somebody new might discover it just because there's a slip up in the algorithm or something like that. But how are you going to reach the other? If the people in your constituency aren't getting that, and you don't have a reliable way to get the information to them through the internet, then you're better off just going and knocking on doors, to be honest. And let's make ourselves responsible for our local areas. How can I help? Well, what's happening in my constituency? First of all, find out where your constituency is. What is my Doyle or County Council constituency? Do we even know? Talking to nationalists online, I was surprised how few people knew the actual constituency. Anyway,
can see the proof of like when I look back at the last general election and we got 31,000 votes for a decade's work on the internet. We were all working real hard there for a very long number of years on the internet, trying to stir nationalism, trying to wake people up into the problems that they face. And we got 31,000 votes out of 5 million people. So we've got to.
Okay, so 31,000 out of 5 million people, yes, but how many voters? Great. I mean, Dara, you've been doing the sterling work there for 10 years. I only came in to this conversation, to this activism, in 2018, 2019 myself. So, you've got years ahead of me. So that general election of 2019 was my first general election. I did a lot of canvassing for that. I already had the UK general election just before that. What I was going to say, yes. So the electorate is probably about 2 million, is it? Let me see very quickly here. So Irish general election 2020, election to the 33rd Doyle. Search for elected. I would say it would be more like 2 million. Okay, right. It wasn't too far off. Registered voters 3 million, 3.5 million. Total 2.2 million. First preference votes. Fianna Fáil 138 seats. Sinn Féin 137 seats. Fine Gael 135 seats. I used to know this stuff better. Okay, registered voters were 3.5 million and the turnout was 2.2 million, which is 62.71%. That sounds about right, yeah. Not quite 2/3, yeah. Valid votes were 2.18 million. Okay, so 2.2 million, let's say. Great, okay.
Face the fact that the internet is not proven to do the things that the objectives that we have, and posters and leaflets and door-to-door canvassing is proven to achieve the objectives.
Amen.
So I accept that the ease of the internet is great, and you can seem like you're having a big effect when you get a lot of views, but those views are generally the same cross-pollinated audience from all of our channels, so all of our channels all have cross-pollination. It's the same few people. I reckon there's about 12 or 14,000 of us now on Telegram. If you look at the biggest audiences that many of us have, they used to be around the 10,000 mark last year. Then it went to 12. Now it's even gone 12.5, 14. So yeah, the audience is increasing, but it's nowhere near the numbers we need to be communicating with.
Yeah, because we're in the.
We'll let you go with that, Steve.
First and second segments.
Yes, that's fucking. That's bang on. That's pretty much my trail of thought there on that as well.
I'm going to continue because I was going somewhere with my conversation, lads. It actually has a theme today. bit of production effort went in for the last hour and a half.
Good man.
And, you know, one of the reasons I started talking about the transgender issue at the Sinn Féin Ardèche was the Panty Bliss thing. But then I'd been watching over the weekend, you know, and I'd seen so many people congratulating Enoch Burke on what he.
Yeah, so he goes on to talk at length here about Enoch Burke. We'll probably skip part of that because I only want to highlight bits that I can add something to or chime in with Dara with my experience, and he makes many good points. And this is a really, really good podcast. Get onto it there. I'll put the links to his Telegram and also to his Substack, where you can get the Telegram if you want to join his Telegram channel if you want to participate or listen to it live, and you can listen to find his Substack if you want to hear the podcast version, the recording after the event.
He has been doing, and I've been watching. You know, there was a lot of people kind of standoffish in the beginning of Enoch's